Hello everyone, and welcome to the fifth lesson in the Azon Masterclass series. Today we're going to be learning all about using WordPress. Before we actually begin the construction on our website, it's important to understand how WordPress works and how we're going to utilize a couple of specific systems that are within WordPress to build our website. This will just kind of make the later classes go a lot easier. That way I won't have to stop and explain how some of these things work along the way. With that said though, if you are a regular WordPress user, it's possible that this particular class may be a lot of repeat for you. With that said, a number of the WordPress systems that I want to talk about today are kind of accessories that go along with your website. When you're viewing a site, you have different areas on each particular page. You have menus across the top, possibly, sidebars going down one, maybe even both sides of the page, and then you have the actual content of the page itself. So some of the things that I'm going to be talking to you about today are taking care of the aspects of your site besides the actual content. And then the other part is going to handle the content portion of the page. So the different things I'm going to walk you through will break down all of the different aspects of the WordPress page so you know how you can take control over each of these different areas so you can make the things show up where you want them to show up at. So the first of these that I would like to point out to you is going to be the widget. Now, the widget is typically found over on the left or the right hand side of the page, if there is one in place. On my particular site though, I don't have anything showing up right now. It might be because I'm just on this default nothing found page because I don't have anything created on my site at this point. If you go to Appearance and Widgets within your WordPress dashboard, you can see what is actually placed within each widget area that is available in your theme. Now, depending on the theme that you are using, these can change. Ultimately, I have all of these different widget areas available to me where I can place different pieces of content or menus into my website, and then these things will show up on every page throughout my site in this particular area, depending on what the widget is for. So most of the time, if you're just dealing with a left or a right sidebar widget, that's going to usually end up being your primary sidebar. I will typically not end up using anything besides the primary sidebar on the vast majority of my websites. Since this is a brand new website though, I have these default sidebars that are already in place. And these each do different things. They add search capabilities, menus where people can click on links to recent posts that have been created on the website. It also has login links. I believe on this particular site though, I think I have actually completely disabled these sidebars though. So even though I have stuff set up in here, even if I try to create a new page or a post on this website, it's still not going to show up if I've disabled that sidebar in my theme settings. With that said, I can't exactly show you what all of these different sidebars will look like on a default site. You can find a picture of that at least in the guidebook for tonight's class. What I usually end up doing though with these Amazon affiliate sites, if I have a sidebar at all, I will usually only leave the search feature there. And then I might come back in later and create some kind of a custom menu to place in this sidebar. But on a lot of my Amazon sites, there's really not a lot of content that I end up wanting to put into this primary sidebar. And so I usually leave it out. I usually just disable it by default so I don't have to worry about it. Other than maybe some menu links, it's kind of the only useful thing that can really go over in the sidebar on an Amazon site. And that sidebar will take up the entire length of the page. So you end up with all of the important content squished into a smaller area, and then you just have this big blank spot with a menu or a little feature up at the top of it. So I find it a lot easier just to disable the sidebar entirely and let the main content of my page be the focus. That way my content, when I create a page, can take up this entire width instead of having a chunk of it removed and being reserved for this sidebar widget. So with that said, on my site, it doesn't really matter whether I remove these or not. But if I was displaying this sidebar and I wanted to take out everything but the search bar, I just click each of the items and drag them out of the sidebar area, and that will then instantly remove them from my live website. Now, the other aspect to this page, besides the main content, besides the title, is going to be this black bar on my site, at least. Most websites will have something like this, though. It might be colored differently, it might be arranged in a slightly different way, but this is kind of the main menu of your website. By default, every time you create a new page within WordPress, this specifically would have to be done under Pages and not Posts, though. When you create a new page, it's going to automatically add the title of that page as a menu link here. And so you can imagine if you create more than just a couple of pages with fairly long titles, it's going to take up the entire width of your site. And after a while, you end up with a multi-road menu that just links to every page on your website. And it's just really not that useful or user-friendly for the people that are visiting your site. You want to give them a menu that makes sense, a menu that allows them to find the information that they are looking to find. So with that said, to control the menus, I go into Appearance and Menus, and then I can find this system here that allows me to gain control over that. So new pages that I create are not automatically added into this menu for me. Now, I actually have this menu set up on this site at the moment. I'm going to go ahead and wipe it out though, because this is basically how it's going to look when you first visit this page on a brand new site that you have installed WordPress on. So first you're going to need to create your menu. You can call it whatever you want. I like to call it top menu because sometimes I might use an additional menu somewhere else on the site. But again, you're welcome to call it whatever you want to. So once we create this menu, there are two different aspects to it. One is to add links to the menu to different pages on my site. All this will be done over here on the left. And then we also have menu settings that control where this menu is going to be displayed and how it's going to behave. Now on my particular site, I don't have any pages created yet, but there will obviously be a home page of my site where when somebody just types in the domain name of this website, they will reach this home page. Even though this home page is going to change, the URL of that home page will actually never end up changing. So I will usually, just to get started, go ahead and create this home link where in the URL box, I just put the full URL to the home page of my site, and under link text, I just put in the word home, and then I click on the add to menu button, and this adds the home link to my menu. So this is the menu that you see on my page here already. Now I will end up adding to this menu as I build out my website. I'm going to kind of have some main pages of my site, and they will each link to a number of supporting pages on my site. So I will add links to those main pages within this primary menu here. So people can navigate to those pages pretty easily. Pages there will be organized in some kind of a logical way so people can find the information that they're looking to find. This also allows me to have this menu on my website and to not link up to everything. It gives me a way to where people can find all of the different articles on my site, but all of the articles on my site are not all linked from this menu at the top of every single page. So it just makes it a lot easier for people to be able to use your website. So as I create some of these primary pages on my site, I'll be revisiting this menu page and adding additional links to those pages. One of the last things, though, that I want to point out about this menu system before I proceed on to the next thing are these settings that I briefly mentioned a little earlier. By default, the menu will end up using this checkbox. If you have not created a menu at all, it's basically going to be doing what this checkbox will do. It will add new pages that you create to the menu automatically, but we do not want this to happen. So I'm not going to be checking that box. All three of the rest of these settings control where this menu is going to show up. For my site, I want this to be showing up in the primary navigation area, and this again is this area up at the top of my page. Depending on what WordPress theme you are using on your site though, if you're not using the Weaver Extreme theme that I am using on my site, these could potentially be different. The same thing kind of goes with widgets too. All of the different widgets that you have available to you and all the different locations. We have the locations over here, we have the available widgets over here. Some of these are specific to the theme. So things like Weaver login would not be available to add to a sidebar, for example, if I wasn't using the Weaver theme. So the menu works the same way. These different display locations are dependent upon what my theme is offering. So if you're using something different, there should be something similar to primary navigation that is available. Most themes at least offer this one particular option. Um, this is really the only one I'm interested in here. So that's all I'm going to have checked. And by checking this and then saving my menu, that's what causes my menu to then display in this particular spot on my website. So without doing that, you'll have the menu created within the WordPress system, but it's not going to actually show up on your website anywhere until you check one of these boxes to actually display it. So after showing you the menus and the widgets or the sidebars, pretty much everything else that's going to go on one of your pages, maybe with the exception of the title and the description, which we covered in the previous class, everything else here is going to be dependent upon which page you are viewing on the site. Creating pages in WordPress, though, can actually be a little confusing to somebody that has never used this system before, because there are actually two main ways that you can create a new page on a WordPress site. There is a post system and there is also a page system. So I want to explain and walk you through each of these two systems today so you can understand what the differences are between them and why I choose to use one over the other. Now on my sites, I will create them entirely out of pages. I will not use the post system. And the reason why is because these Amazon sites that I'm building, they're not really typically intended to be a blog. I'm creating a site, I'm putting articles that I write on different pages of the site, but I'm not really going to go back and continually update the site. There's not going to be, a new article popping up on it every week or every month or something like that. I'm just going to create the site and I'm going to let it sit there and do its thing. So the pages are really intended more to be a static page that you create, where you create it, it sits there. For the most part, it doesn't really change, at least not on any kind of a regular basis. A post, though, really exists because WordPress began and still is widely used as a blogging platform. So when you have a blog, you'll constantly be posting new content. You'll write up a new article every day or every week, or however often you decide to publish a new article on the site about whatever your blog is about. This post system, since you're constantly adding new content to your site, is designed to handle that. So you don't have to constantly be editing other pages of your site whenever you create a new post. You don't have to go in and add a link to that new post somewhere. WordPress takes care of linking everything together for you when you're using the post system. So with that said, you might think that it would be easier to just use the post system. In a lot of ways it is, but it's kind of utilizing the default way that WordPress is intended to be used. Now, there's nothing wrong with that if your site is going to be a blog, but when you're creating one of these Amazon affiliate sites and then you just leave the site to sit there for a couple of years, maybe even 5 or 10 years, you don't want people to go and visit your website and see dates on your material. So if somebody is taking a look at your website about um, something that has a short lifespan in terms of the technology level, like a TV, for example. If they're looking at a product page of yours where you're talking about a particular TV, and it's clearly labeled up at the top of this page with a date of when this article was created, and it's from a year ago or even 2 years ago, you would automatically assume that it's going to contain outdated information. You'd be a lot less likely to want to read it or to trust the information that's there or to take the product recommendation that might be on that page. So that's exactly what the post system is doing, though. It's going to label whatever you're creating with a date. Whereas the pages, they're not meant to be labeled with a date because they're not going to be constantly added to and updated like a lot of the sites that use posts will end up doing. So even though during this training series, I'm going to be building the website entirely using the WordPress page system, I still want to walk you through a little bit of the post system just so you can understand how it's going to be different. There might be some of you that are watching this that would end up wanting to run a blog instead of making a more static type of a website like I'm going to teach you to create. Really, there would not be a lot of difference between the two, except for the fact that the blog site will usually come across as more personal and it's going to have new content being added to it all the time. But again, you have to remember, if you take the blog approach, if you decide to use the post system, your content will end up getting labeled with a date, unless you go into the theme and specifically disable that information from being able to be displayed. Another part of the reason, though, why I choose to use the page system is because the post system, it's not just about creating a new page that goes up on your website. You're organizing your posts into WordPress categories. You're also kind of organizing these posts using WordPress tags, whereas a page just kind of stands by itself. It doesn't have this association with other pages automatically on your website. I find that it gives me more control over what my final site's going to end up like when I use the page system. I can choose when and where to link up to other pages on my site. I can choose how to design the areas that actually link up with other pages on my site. When you're using a post system, though, you just have these category pages and they list out the posts that are sorted into those categories. And they show a short description, they show a link, maybe an image going to the page. But there's not really an easy way that you can gain control over all of that. Now, again, I told you I wanted to show you a little bit about how this system is going to work, just so you can, again, understand the differences. Or if you decide that you do want to take a blog approach on a website that you build, you're at least a little bit familiar with this system enough to where you could use it yourself. So before you actually start creating a WordPress post. You need to have these categories that you can sort the post into. There is a default category. It's called uncategorized. You can create new posts on your site and have them just put into the uncategorized category and leave it at that. But the point would be to take all of the different articles that you're going to end up putting on your website and figure out a number of main topics that you could sort all of those different articles into. Each of those main topics would basically be a category. So for example, on the site that I'm going to build, I will have a section on more informational type of articles, and then I will also have a section on product-based articles. The product-based articles are actually going to end up being brands. So I could call the category simply brands. I could get a little more elaborate with it and call it toy robot brands or something along those lines. This is really the only thing you have to worry about putting in though. It will automatically create the slug for you based on what your category name is going to be. The description usually ends up not being shown on the public website, so there's not really any point in putting that there either. Now what this does is it creates a new page on my site. This is the brands page. You can see it says category and then it says brands and then it displays this page. But there's nothing actually in my brands page yet. To put something there, I would have to create a new post and then sort that post into that particular category. So I'm just going to create a quick post here. So I can show you exactly what is going to be happening. Over on the right-hand sidebar, we have a section for these categories. So this allows me to select the category that I want the post to be sorted into. I also have options through my theme. Weaver Extreme especially adds a lot of different options, ways that you can kind of modify each individual page or post that is on your website. So if there was a certain part of the page that you didn't want to be displayed on just this one particular post, maybe I was showing sidebars on all the other pages of my website, but on this particular one I didn't want them to show up, I could just set these sidebars to not actually show. So these different options control how my page is actually going to look. I have other things like SEO settings where I can set a title tag and a meta description for them. I'll be going into more detail about this type of stuff later on in this series when I'm actually creating the content and publishing those pages. And then we have categories and tags. Now, the tags are kind of like a category. It's a topic for this particular article, and it allows you to group other articles into the same topic. However, on a smaller website, like I usually will end up building for these Amazon sites where I'm only going to have 20 pages. If I have a home page and I have a number of main pages on my site, which would be categories essentially of articles, it's really only going to leave me with 5, maybe 6 articles getting sorted into each of the categories or each of the main topics that I'm going to have for my site. So within those categories, there's not a lot of additional organization that would be needed. But if you think much larger scale, let's say you had 1,000 articles on a website and they were all sorted into maybe 3 to 5 different categories, it could be pretty hard to find the content that you would be looking for on a website like that. So these tags give you an additional way that you could organize this content. Now we also have options such as the featured image. Typically when you are dealing with a WordPress post, if you want an image to show up on the category page along with the listing for it, then you usually need to set a featured image. I'm going to go ahead and just find some random picture here that I could use as the image for this test page. So I've set a featured image on this post now. I'm going to go ahead and publish this because I've selected a category. I've added in a tag. You can even add in multiple tags on a single post. And then I've added a featured image to go with it. So as I mentioned earlier, the point of the post system is kind of for ease of use when you are constantly creating new articles. So by just publishing a post and sorting it into the brands category, when I refresh this page, I now see this showing up. So there's a couple of different things here that I want to point out as reasons why I'm really not a big fan of the post and category system. Again, this is why I prefer to kind of use the page system within WordPress. Number one, there's not really a way to edit this particular page. There are these edit links. This edit here is actually going to this post. If I try to edit the category, it's just taking me back to that information that I had before. Even if I try to put in something in the description field, most themes will not show it. Oh, this one actually does. Weaver Extreme has, I guess, changed that, or maybe I'm using a different sub-theme than I typically pick. That actually will show the test description that I put into this category page. But beyond adding that extra little bit of text, it doesn't really let me do anything else. I just called this category brands, but it has the words category archives right in front of it. Is there an easy way, or really even any way, that you can wipe that out. It is possible to try to take over these category pages and create your own custom page to replace them, but it's really not an easy process. There is no simple way to just edit this page and remove this phrase because you don't want it to be there. Also, the information that is being shown by default for each of the articles is something that doesn't really work out that great for me on an Amazon site. One of the biggest is the date that goes along with it. I published this today. Looks like my website's running on GMT, so it actually says it's technically tomorrow. It shows the admin name though for my website login. That's kind of something I wouldn't want to be showing up there. There is a way to change this display name so you could make it say whatever you wanted it to say without having to change your administrator username. But again, these are just extra little steps that would have to be taken to kind of configure the site to show the information that you would want it to show. Then when you go to the individual post article, it's still showing that same information there. Now I mentioned the tags before, how they're kind of another way that you could sort and organize your content. Just like the categories get their own URL and their own page that lists all the different articles that are in that category, the tag system does the same thing. So because I tagged this as robots, I now have tag robots as a page that I can visit, and it'll list any of the posts that are sorted with the robots tag. And you can tell it's this page because it says tag archives robots. The same thing kind of goes for this page as the category page. There's no real easy way to edit it. And a lot of times, especially on a small website, you end up with pages that are basically the same thing. I've only created one post so far, but because I put it into both a category and a tag, this page and the category page that I was looking at before, they're pretty much the exact same thing. The only difference is maybe the title up at the top. So I basically have ended up creating pages of duplicate content on my website. So this isn't going to help me with search rankings if I didn't have drastically different tag and categories on my website. So if you had a site that had tons of articles, this could easily work out beneficially for you because you probably wouldn't have a category page and a tag page looking almost identical with the same content on them because you would have simply so many different articles. You'd have a lot more freedom to do that type of organization. But on a 20-page website, you don't really have that freedom. There's only so many different ways that you can organize it before it becomes kind of repetitive. Now, it is easier doing it the way that I've showed you with this category and post system. When I go to the home page of my site, it's automatically populated with some information now. And then I also have the brand and the robot pages that will list out basically the same thing that I have on this home page right now, the links to visit this new post that I've created. So this goes back to the blog style type of a website where you publish new content, it automatically shows up throughout the different areas of your website. The newest stuff ends up showing up at the top so people can see your most recently published information. But a 20-page Amazon site, the home page would just be a listing of the 20 different pages that you create, basically. So it wouldn't really have much in the way of meaning for people. The other alternative to using this post and category system is to use the page system. Now, the page system is more simplistic in that there are no categories, there are no tags that you have to sort these under. But any sorting or organization type of stuff that you want to do with these pages, you'll have to end up doing it manually. I don't find this to be a very big deal. I do my own coding, my own web design. So obviously I can change the design of something. I can add links within my pages to kind of create my own way of connecting all the content together. This is typically not something that the average WordPress user would know how to do, or that they would find to be very easy to do. However, as part of this training series, as I'm going through and creating the content and assembling my website, when I'm doing designs on a couple of different pages that I use to link my content together, I'll be using these code generators that I've created based off of designs that I've built for my Amazon affiliate websites. And it'll just let you recreate the coding to create that design on your own website too. But you won't have to actually have any kind of coding knowledge to be able to use this. So I want to go ahead and create a new page here. So I can show you the differences from the page and the post system. Since I have showed you the posts already, and especially since the page system is the one that I will end up using when I'm creating my site during this series. This is obviously the more important part. As I mentioned already, though, the biggest reason why I prefer to use the page system is because it gives me control over all of the different pages that I'm publishing on my site. Not only using the post system can you not edit the category or the tag pages, but you also can't edit the homepage of your website. My homepage here has no content on it except for to list the different articles that are located on this site. What if I wanted to add some text up to the top of this page? Since it's the home page, it seems, pretty logical to have some kind of content on it other than just links to the different articles that are on my site. But using the post and the category system, you can't edit this home page. There's nothing that you can actually do to it. So by creating my own pages, I can do whatever I want to with these pages. Now I'm just going to put a placeholder page here for right now to get me started. I'm going to add a title and a little bit of text for the content. Beyond that, though, there's not really a lot of other stuff that I have to do. I have the same types of options with my Weaver Extreme theme that'll allow me to control different aspects of the page. If I wanted to hide, menus or page titles or headers or footers, which would be like the top or the bottom of my entire website, hiding sidebars, all that type of stuff can be done with these theme options. I also have SEO settings that I would want to address when I'm creating my actual website, but there's no categories, there's no tags that you have to organize your content into. So I'm just going to go ahead and publish this page and go and take a look at it real quick. The only content that's being displayed here is the content that I have actually put in. I have my title and I have the actual article text. That's the only thing showing up. Whereas on one of these posts, I have this extra content showing up here. I have the extra content showing up down here as well that I didn't create and I really don't have a lot of control over unless I just simply want to hide it all. The point here is with the page, the only thing that's going to show up is the stuff that I put in to WordPress. So this gives me complete control over the content and how this content will be displayed on my public website. And it's just simply not something that you can easily obtain using the post system. So this is kind of the biggest thing for me in terms of why I prefer to use one or the over the other, just in case you might be wondering about, is there a reason why? I'm not just going to go in here and be like, use pages, don't worry about the posts, and just not explain it to you. Because there are situations where the post could be better, or it could be useful for, more of a blog style type of a website. Now, in terms of my homepage content, I've created a post and I've created a page, but on the homepage of my website, it's not automatically updated with the page that I created. Only the post is showing up here. This simply means that to use the default system where the home page is spitting out all the different links to the different pages on your site in this type of a format, the only way to obtain this is using the post system. The pages stand alone and you get to decide if and how they actually get connected with the rest of your website. So the only way somebody could go to my website and land on this new page that I created is if I give people a way to navigate to it. It could be a menu link up at the top. It could be something within the homepage content itself, or maybe within the content of one of the other pages that I link to from this menu. One way or another, though, you have to manually connect these pages into the rest of your website, or nobody will actually be able to find them and get to them. So with that said, you can obviously add links to these pages through the menu up at the top of the site. You could have a menu in the sidebar that could link up to some of these pages. But beyond those basic menus, the only other way to really incorporate these pages into your site is by linking up to at least some of them through your homepage. And the only way that you can gain control over this homepage is to force WordPress to not behave in this default manner where it's going to list all of the new posts that are showing up. So to accomplish this, we have a simple WordPress system. If I go to settings and reading, I can control what's going to happen on my homepage. So right here it says my homepage is going to display and your latest posts are selected. So posts here is referring to any posts that are created on this site. But the other option is to show a static page. Now I don't use the post page option here. I use the homepage option, and this allows me to select any of the WordPress pages that I've created and assign it as being the homepage of my entire website. So when I do this, if I go back to my homepage, it's no longer going to list all the different posts that I've created. It's actually going to look just like uh, this, the page that I recently created for you. This is going to now become my homepage. So I control now 100% of the content that's actually going to show up on this homepage. So I get to decide what content's going to be displayed to the visitor. I get to decide whether or not and how I link up to different pages throughout the rest of my website this way. So what I will end up doing is going through WordPress and creating all of the different pages that I'm going to have on my website first. So I'll create a homepage. I'll put the text content on it that I want to have on that page. I will create usually 2 or more main or category types of pages on my site. And then I will create a bunch of different article pages. And the home page will link up to the main category types of pages. And those category pages will link up to all the different articles that are sorted under them. So I create a page, an individual page for each one of those pages that will be on my site. Then I can go back through these pages and link them up together. So I would go into my home page and add a little bit of coding that will link up my home page to those main category pages on my site. And then on the category pages, I will go in there and add in some coding that will link them up to all the additional article pages that I'm going to have on my website. So doing it this way, you build out the pages first, and then you just kind of assemble the entire website. And again, this gives you complete control over all of those different pages throughout the entire thing. Now, just to show you what I'm talking about, this is the type of website that I'm going to be teaching you how to build. So when I go to the home page of this site, this is obviously not a WordPress post type of a system where it's just listing out the different articles that I have. This is a WordPress page, so I've put in a little bit of text content up at the top of the page. Then I have a bunch of coding to take care of the design of this middle section here. So this will include the links to my main pages of the site, which would be these three across the top. And then I also have included some links to individual articles that are sorted within each of these main pages. And so I have an image and a description to go along with each of those. So again, you're not going to have to worry about the technical aspect of accomplishing something like this. I have a code generator that I'll be providing for you, and you'll just be able to type in the text into this code generator, and it'll spit out the code for you. You copy and paste it into your page, and you'll get this same type of a design that I'm using. So then the rest of this is just the extra text content that I have added down below this HTML coding. So I have more content. I even have an image that I have thrown in there. So this is not something that can be done with this exact look without having extra text, extra things on the page that you don't want. You can't do that with the post system like you can do with the page system. When I go into one of these pages, these are kind of the main pages of my site, and they link up to other pages. I again control how this is going to look. I control exactly what text is going to show up in the description for these additional pages. I control the design of it all. I control where everything is going to be placed on the page. So this is, again, not a post. This is not a category page in the post system. This is just a WordPress page that I've created using some custom coding. So this entire process here is just making use again of the page system. I create the individual pieces to my website, and then I go back through and I assemble them all together using this extra coding that my code generators will help you to create. So one of the final things that I want to mention to you has to do with the WordPress system itself. The WordPress software and also other software that goes along with it. So this would be the WordPress plugins and the WordPress themes. All of this software gets updated on a fairly continual basis because WordPress is constantly evolving. They're constantly releasing new versions. And so whenever they release a new version and they change something within WordPress, it'll usually end up breaking some plugins or themes that were depending on that particular feature that is now changed. And so the plugins and the themes will end up updating, usually after WordPress has updated itself. Now, WordPress will typically let you know when it needs to be updated to a new version by putting a big banner across the top of your dashboard area saying that there's a new version of WordPress available. But you can also check on it yourself through this updates page. Right up at the top here, you can see that I have the latest version of WordPress. It's going to automatically apply future security updates. So if they release version 4.9.2, that's going to automatically get installed for me. But when WordPress 5.0 comes out, it's not going to automatically update. I would have to come back to this page myself and update it manually. Now, sometimes updating WordPress or updating a plugin or a theme can end up changing the way your website looks. The safe thing to do is technically to make a backup of your entire website before applying WordPress plugin or theme upgrades. However, I do not personally practice that particular habit. I have very, very rarely run into any kind of an issue when doing these updates. Um, Maybe with the exception of updating a plugin or a theme and it just possibly breaks something that's on my website. When it comes to WordPress itself, updating it, um, I've really never had issues with it breaking anything on my site. It doesn't mean that it's not possible. It just really depends on what your website is actually doing. But if you're building these Amazon websites, upgrading WordPress, you most likely wouldn't have to worry about doing backups ahead of time. However, when you finish building a website, I would recommend to make a backup copy of it, something that you keep on your local computer. This way, if anything ever happens to your website, if let's say a hacker took it over and your host shuts down your website and they say, you have to clean all of these malicious files off of your website before we'll allow it to be live again. You can sit there and try to pick through all the files yourself. You can pay somebody hundreds of dollars to clean your website for you, or you can just delete the whole thing and restore your backup that you created after you first built your website and just reset it back to how it was from the beginning. And then you don't have to worry about that type of stuff. With that said, though, um, I've been talking about backups a number of different times here recently. It can be something that is helpful to practice at some point within this site building process. At the very, very least, again, make a backup for yourself once your entire website is built. Within the guidebook for today's class, though, I want to say it's on the second to last page of the guidebook, all the way down the bottom. You'll see a little section on WordPress backups. And there's a link there to a page on my website that will give you access to my cPanel training. And this will teach you how to go about creating a backup of your website. It's not training that you have to buy or enter in any kind of information for. Just visit the link that I have there to my site and you'll be able to watch that training lesson if you're not familiar with creating website backups. So with that said, if you decide you want to do backups, do those before you apply your updates. When you are ready to apply your updates, for WordPress, you just look for a button right around here that says to update or possibly download the new version. For the themes and the plugins, if you have any of those that need to be updated, you just select the ones that you want to update and click on the button to update that software. And it'll automatically download it, install it, upgrade everything, and take care of all those updates for you. So after I've applied that theme update, for example, I can see that my software here is completely up to date. There's a lot of different reasons why you would want to keep WordPress and your plugins and your themes up to date. There are sometimes new features that get released, and you might want to be able to take advantage of some of those new features. But in my eyes, especially with a site that you're going to build and then just leave it to sit there, you're probably not really that interested or having a need for new features being in your software. Because if the site's already built and you have a new feature available, that would just require more work to go back and update that site and start using that new feature. But the really important reason for doing these updates is for security purposes. All three of these different types of software, WordPress itself, the plugins, and the themes, they are all vulnerable to potentially having some type of a security flaw to them. And when the creators of these different pieces of software get reports about those issues, or they find these issues themselves, and they create new code to get rid of those security flaws, then they'll release an update. So chances are, if you build a WordPress site and you never update any of the software on it, and you just leave it to sit there for 2 to 5 years, at some point during that 2 to 5 years, you run a very strong likelihood of your site getting hacked and simply taken over, because people can identify these sites using the older software, and they'll target them. And they'll target the known security flaws that's in those older versions. And so they can fairly easily break into those older, out-of-date websites. So keeping the new version simply helps to protect your site. Obviously, if somebody gets into your site and loads a bunch of malicious files on it, it can ruin the reputation of your site in search rankings. It can also get your site temporarily suspended or maybe even permanently banned from your web hosting account. So keep yourself up to date. Keep a backup of your site to restore in case things go really, really bad, and you can just start over from the point where you finished building your website. So after going through everything in today's class, you should have a pretty good idea of the main systems that we will use within WordPress to create our website. We're going to have a menu up at the top of the page. Having the widget in the sidebar is optional. I taught you about the post and the category system, even though I'm not going to be using it to create these websites. And then I also taught you about the page system. So at the very least, you'll end up using the menu system and the page system to create your website. Using just these two pieces of WordPress, you can build your entire website. All the different pages, all the different content that's going to go on those pages, how everything ends up getting linked together. So this is the bulk of the work that ends up needing to be done on these Amazon sites. With that knowledge in hand now, when it comes time for the next Azon Masterclass lesson, where we actually begin constructing the website, all the different things that we will be doing inside of WordPress, the way we will be using the WordPress system to construct this entire website, it'll be something that's already a little familiar to you now if you've never used WordPress before. So that way I'll be able to focus on talking to you more about the actual content that's going on these Amazon sites, why things are going to be in particular places on these sites, instead of trying to teach you how to use the WordPress system as we go along. Today's class gives you kind of all that foundational knowledge for everything that's going to come next in this training series. So finally, in the next class, we will be starting at least the construction of our website. It is going to take us a few different lessons to work our way through the entire construction process of these websites. But in the next lesson, we will finally be breaking ground and publishing at least some pages of content on the website itself. Kathy is asking if I put my legal pages at the bottom instead of the top. I do usually end up putting legal page links down at the bottom of the site instead of the top. Kathy, yes. They could technically go in either location with the homepage link and 2 or more category links up at the top of the page. There's usually not room for potentially 2 more links up there for legal pages. So it's kind of just a matter of personal preference. That, and I don't know, I think a lot of people are used to seeing those links down at the bottom of a website instead of up at the top. Kathy is also asking about my Amazon affiliate disclosure. Where do I put that? I usually create a standalone page for it. I'll typically just call this page about us or about whatever my domain name is, and I'll put a little bit of general information about the website itself, why it exists, why I created it, and then it's usually on that page that I include my Amazon affiliate disclosure. There are some people that, say it should be on every single page of your website, like down in the footer or in the sidebar or something like that, which it's quite okay to do. I've just always put it on that about page, though, for many years. It's never given me any issues with Amazon, obviously, by doing it that way. So it seems to be acceptable to them as long as it is just somewhere on your site that's maybe relatively easy to run into.